and welcome back to Electoral Reform Hour on the network service of Radio Nigeria. It's an exciting start to the year, and we're thrilled to have you with us for our very first edition of Electoral Reform Hour for the year 2025. Over the past year, we've explored key topics such as electoral security, gender equity, voter participation, and strengthening electoral laws. This year, we'll continue pushing the envelope on discussions that are essential to shaping the future of Nigeria's democracy. Today, we're focusing on something at least at the heart of every successful democracy, that is building a peaceful and inclusive electoral process. So stick with us as we examine how we can work together to build an electoral process that not only reflects the will of the people, but also embodies the peace and inclusivity that Nigeria truly deserves. My name is Ezenwa, your anchor. Electoral Reform Hour is a program aimed to foster inclusive dialogue among citizens from varied backgrounds concerning electoral reform and constitutional amendments, enhance public understanding and awareness regarding electoral reform, and compile and present citizen-derived recommendations to the National Assembly and INEC for consideration. This program is brought to you by Peering Advocacy and Advancement Center in Africa, PAACA, with support from MacArthur Foundation. Elections in Nigeria are a vital part of democracy, giving citizens the power to shape their future. Yet, issues like electoral violence, voter suppression, low turnout, and concerns over transparency persist, challenging the credibility of the process. The role of security agencies, logistical preparedness, and public trust remain at the heart of these concerns as incidents of violence continue to erode confidence in the system. Addressing these issues is not just about protecting the integrity of elections, but also fostering unity in a diverse nation as ours. To help us unpack these challenges and explore ways to build a peaceful and inclusive electoral process, I'm excited to be joined by Dr. Ayokunle Fagbemi. Dr. Ayokunle Fagbemi is the Executive Director of Center for Peacebuilding and Socio-Economic Resource Development, CepSERD. A seasoned political scientist and security scholar, Dr. Fagbemi has over 3 decades of experience in governance, electoral process management, and preventive peace building. He's played important roles in designing and implementing frameworks for credible elections, political education programs, and election observations across Nigeria and indeed other African countries. With his extensive expertise in conflict mitigation, early warning systems, and democratic sustenance, Dr. Fagbemi has contributed significantly to fostering peaceful electoral processes. His insights into grassroots dynamics, policy frameworks, and socio-political engineering make him an invaluable resource in addressing the challenges of Nigeria's electoral process. Dr. Fagbemi, you're welcome to Electoral Reform Hour.
Thank you very much for having me.
So how has it been? I'm excited to have you as my first guest this year, and I'm happy that you've been following the work that we've been doing around the radio program.
Thank you very much, and I must commend you for your service to the fatherland and to the continent and to humanity generally. And I do want to thank the sponsors for supporting this kind of initiative that helps us to interface with the citizenry and stakeholders at large.
So we have, as you know, and that is your forte. You're big in this area. Security plays a critical role in safeguarding elections, and yet there are concerns. How do we get security agents to, be professional rather than being used as tool for political manipulation?
Number one is, how do we ensure that all Nigerian stakeholders know about the existence of the legal and policy frameworks, and all Nigerian stakeholders adhere? That's the main issue. They adhere to these rules and regulations. Therefore, if they adhere, you will discover that the security and law enforcement officers will find it easy to implement their own laws and guidelines that are supposed to be used in policing the electoral system and cycle. I said electoral system and cycle because there are some activities that ought to take place before the election day, and there are some of these issues that will spike and snowball onto the election day and post-election. And what do I mean? We have the Police Act, which demands that under the regulations there are some forms that ought to be in existence. The Police Act and those regulations demand that each police officer is expected to carry a pocket diary. If they have their pocket diary, they are supposed to use it to document. And you will bear me out, you hardly see policemen carrying pocket diaries. You would have expected that by virtue of the way civil society actors we have pushed for the Nigerian security and defense management architecture to support the electoral system, we have gotten them to put in place the following. One, there is interagency collaboration on security, ICAS. Then you now have within the Electoral Commission, the INEC, a police formation system that supports INEC, that statutorily within the ambit of the Police Act equates to an area command, which means that if we are following all the rules, the regulations, the law, the way they are, that formation within the Electoral Commission is supposed not just to provide security and coordinate, but at the same time collate reports, and should there be infractions, they are supposed to facilitate the investigation and lead to the prosecution. So often when I hear colleagues like you say, oh, we need to have an election offenses commission, this and this, I say, no, wait a bit. If only we can activate and implement 10% of the existing legal and policy frameworks, we will solve a number of the issues. You'll discover, sir, that in Cross River, Akwa Ibom, when our brother was the resident electoral commissioner, Mikey Guinea, he was able to prosecute. He did not have an election offenses or electoral offenses commission, but he used the existing framework. So the question now is the way forward. How do we get to ensure that all of us read, know about these laws, and then we implement them and ensure that all stakeholders follow suit?
Okay, the nature of this program is a political education program, so that's why I allowed you to. I want to be able to draw out as much as I can get from you before. But the challenge is that you started with, if different stakeholders, the assumption is that they will play their role, but reality is that they don't. And so for us, the concern therefore is not what should, is what are we dealing with. You talked about the Interagency Consultative Committee on Election Security, which in my view is part of those rituals. Rituals in the sense that I don't know how much of real security strategic roles it plays in terms of operationalizing. We've called for some media civil society observatory in that access, to not in terms of operations, but to be able to know. So what do you think about that before I go to the main conversation?
The idea of an observatory is a welcome development, and I'm hoping that the National Security Advisor's Office will be very conscious of the fact that the National Security Strategy document that is used in governing all these operations says the whole of government and the whole of society, meaning therefore that other stakeholders are expected to participate. It therefore means that those of us who are saying we want to get involved and the people that we are going to recommend to be part of that system must be people that have a background and a knowledge in that field, so that when they go in for conversations with them, they'll be able to discuss all these things and stay within the ambit of that which is agreeable to the legal and policy frameworks. That's number one. Number two is that all of us, and this is where we are going to keep on saying, we are hoping that statutory agencies for public enlightenment, civic education, must do their bit. At the level of the government system, we are expecting that the Nigerian institution named the National Orientation Agency will do what is expected of them to be doing. Number two is that each of the political parties, interestingly, are expected to do a lot more in terms of civic education and political socialization, which interestingly they do not do. You'll discover that once the election is over, it's as if they have gone on holiday. I plead with Nigerians to begin to take the political parties to account in this regard of civic education, socialization, and engagement in such a way and manner that we can truly say they are telling us what we need to know and preparing us for the next election on the one hand, but making us to become agents and stakeholders of participatory democracy.
Absolutely. So your organization, I know Clean Foundation, I know KDI, Impact, are on top of this issue of early warning systems.
Yes.
And it's not, in my view, there is the risk, management system for election security is not as strong as the noise that it should, confront. We have these challenges. How do we get to improve early warning systems in elections?
There's been a challenge, and the challenge and the gap comes from the fact that when you are dealing with proper early warning that has to do with security, you are not supposed to allow unnecessary modulations from your human rights activism. That is where we have been having issues. For those of us who have played the roles that we have played, and you don't hear us make the kind of waves that other entities make, is because we do not confuse or allow the modulations of human rights activism to cross the line
of professionalism.
Yes. So we need to enlighten ourselves on the need to ensure that this is properly done by stakeholders. Number two is that there is this need to appreciate that there is a principle and notion that is seriously supposed to be observed, and that is know and not to disclose, and if you disclose, do not attribute. Meaning, therefore, that there are some things you will discover on the field, and when you share the information, it remains classified so that the state actors that are supposed to activate can use it, and they know that they are going to utilize it. However, this is where the challenges have erupted over the years. When you do share with them, and they have to take, it's like a lethargic reaction by the stakeholders that are state actors. They do not activate as expected. The way we work in civil society is not the way they work. They want to revalidate. If they finish revalidation, then there are considerations that they will bring to bear. And then in the process, often time, two, they modulate again in such a way that they will not easily activate. And we want to begin to enlighten all of us to say, yes, we will pass some of this data to them. And when you pass the data to them and they are trying to convert it to intelligence, we reserve the right to use the same data to activate advocacy in such a way that it will help them to do the needful and correctly so. And this is where, for example, we have been saying that the political parties are not playing their roles the way they should. If the political parties were playing their roles, we would not be having the kind of challenges that we are having. I'll give you a good example. On election day, a political party is expected to deploy an average of minimum of 2 party agents per polling units. And you'll discover that they do not deploy as much as they expected to.
Or sometimes they don't even deploy at all.
And they don't, and occasionally when some parties deploy, they deploy infiltrated agents from another party who are proxies. So you end up having a situation where the critical components that we're supposed to have them play in that value chain, they are expected to be the eyes of the political party at the polling unit. They are the ones who are supposed to sign and collect a valid EC8A at the polling unit. But because they are not there, the party does not have any. And if you do not have EC8A from the polling unit, you cannot come to say you want to challenge the process. Yes, those of us from civil society, we've succeeded in pushing the frontiers. We've gotten beavers, we've gotten IREV that should ordinarily, but the political parties must deploy party agents to the polling units. And then I'll jump and go to the lawyers that often represent these political parties at litigation. They overeat the polity, demanding that they are going to INEC to go and source these materials because they want to use it
materials they should ordinarily have from their party agents.
That they should have from their party agents. And if they were that smart, and the amount that they pay these legal practitioners is too humongous that they do nothing. When you look at what happened in the United States for this last election cycle, on election day, the moment they observe there is an infraction, the lawyers had their teams ready and they were taking deposition and ensuring that some of those documents and the documentation were notarized so that ultimately they will be useful before the law courts. You remember that there is one particular phrase that keeps on happening before our law courts in Nigeria during election tribunal cycle or the electoral phase, the cycle of litigation. They always say they do not accept third party. But if the lawyers are done the needful at the local government level of ensuring that those of them that were actually party agents or supervisors of those agents deposed immediately, and you add the affidavit and the deposition is recorded that, okay, we are submitting this and this and that, and then you swear to an affidavit before the notary public, and there was a policeman with you, that is valid. You now bring it and cascade it and front load. That way, we will not be having the kind of challenges, which now leads us back into one of the areas where all of us are always concerned about, and that is the collation. If the party agents at the polling units have done their job, there will be no challenge of collation at the ward level. And if there were challenges, immediately that was being done the normal legal thing provided for by our laws would have been taken care of. And hopefully, I am believing that subsequently, I belong to a school of thought, and because I had my brief experience in government. I worked in government for a long time. So I belong to the school of thought that says ordinarily legal and policy framework should not be tinkered with in the first 5 years. You only review, amend after 5 years when you would have studied. So if we were to leave the existing Electoral Act the way it is, you will discover that we will be able to do a number of things administratively to ensure that some of these anomalies are corrected, because we are dealing with kakistocrats. They are not democrats. Kakistocrats are only interested in state capture. They want to allow all of us Nigerians and stakeholders to say we were faithful to that election ritual, but we will not allow you the pleasure of determining the outcome. We will determine the outcome. And they've already started with the kinds of some of the meetings and the pronouncements that some of them are making. I am hoping that going forward, we will need to shift emphasis away from the Electoral Commission. We will need to shift more emphasis to the political parties and these political stakeholders to begin to become more responsible, to begin to become more Democrats rather than kakistocrats.
I think you really are covering the field so much, in such a short time, and what was exciting to me is that the tragedy of public commentary in Nigeria is that the kind of knowledge that you are putting forward is not available in normal public commentary, and that's for me why this program became important. That the political class, the politicians and their candidates have outsourced, the work of organizing to civil society. Dr. Fagbemi, you are not talking enough, as if we are, and then sometimes also those of us in civil society also helps that by saying after elections we say we are hurt by the outcome. Why should a civil society person be hurt by the outcome of an election? So before we move towards break, the challenge of low voter turnout is becoming a strong issue. People call it apathy. I don't like to do that, but I'll leave that to you. What do you think will constitute this turnout, and then what can INEC, civil society, and maybe the political parties to do to see whether we can turn this trend?
What we're dealing with is called PRS, Problem, Reaction, Solution. Is part of kakistocrats using what we call totalitarian tiptoeing. They know they don't want the election, but they are conscious of the fact that that election must hold. So what do? They deliberately ensure that they distract as many citizens and stakeholders that ordinarily should exercise their suffrage rights of voting. And how do I mean? Number one, they disenfranchise all security and law enforcement officers. The moment you disenfranchise all security and law enforcement officers by saying they are going to go on election duties and assignment, you have already taken away a sizable population from the registered voters. Mind you, security and law enforcement officers are one of the very special class of patriotic Nigerians. So they always will do their voter registration and they have the instruments and they should vote. You were in Ghana. You recall that in the Ghanaian electoral system, they have a way of countermanding and ensuring that all security and law enforcement officers even vote
through early voting.
Early voting. There is nothing stopping us from doing that here in Nigeria. We can do it. Number 2 is to ensure that the way they deploy officials, public servants that ordinarily should equally vote as well, they do not allow them to go perform their civic obligations. They will, National Orientation Agency, Human Rights Commission, every other entity suddenly will say they are playing one role or the other. So they deploy all their staff away from their primary places of abode, and they can no longer participate and perform their civic obligations. So I'm giving you the data of how you filter away a sizable number. Then we have already said, let us begin, and it started with my very good friend and brother, Professor Maurice Iwu. Let us try to see if we brought people from the academia. And as they started using them as returning officers to play one role or the other, it means that these same people will travel. And when you ask the head of a household to travel out of jurisdiction, the family that he has left behind is disorganized. And that is why I said it is called strategic distraction that will not allow people. So the man has gone, is not going to vote. His wife is glued to the television and radio. His family, they are with their telephone to be sure that they can keep in touch with the man. If we can solve the problems of ensuring that the way we deploy state actors is mitigated, we will solve that challenge. So it's not just about apathy. There is the component of totalitarian tiptoeing, strategic distraction and desensitization to ensure that as many people do not vote.
The media, the civil society,
everybody. Then we now come to the weaponization of poverty that has been done, which is the one that all of us talk about, to the extent that they now know that, okay, these people will want to do something that is sinister at this polling unit. But if we don't go out, they cannot manipulate figures. And that is why they do vote buying. The citizens understand that you have weaponized poverty. You want to capture the state, but you still need elements of some validation here. So you want people to come out to vote. Bring money, we will come out. Some of them will collect and will not vote for them. But the political actors have already mastered the art of this manipulation. And therefore, we come back to the electoral malpractice.
All right. It's still the Electoral Reform Hour, and you can be part of the live program by sharing your comments via social media platform on X at PAACA.ng, and that is PAACA.ng with the hashtag at Electoral Reform Hour. And you can leave your questions and comments for us on Facebook via at PAACA. That is at PAACA. And our WhatsApp number 0816-8083-424. And the phone lines will be open soon. Don't go anywhere.
Stay tuned to Electoral Reform Hour on the network service of Radio Nigeria. We'll be back shortly.
Are you ready for change? Join the Peering Advocacy and Advancement Center in Africa, PAACA, for the Electoral Reform Hour. This program amplifies electoral reform campaigns and provides citizens with opportunity to make meaningful contributions that will strengthen our electoral process.
I think what we should do and what we've been advocating for is to find a way to harmonize all the biometrics we have been doing in the country so that we have one. If you have your NIMSI card, for instance, it should be able to carry all the data, social security like it's done everywhere. So when you vote, everything about it is there.
My position is that the result, substantive, the election ends at the polling unit. Once the presiding officer, in the presence of polling agents, in the presence of security men, in the presence of all other stakeholders, including some of the people that voted, counted the scores of candidates and parties openly, entered the results into Form EC8A, and snapped it. That is the real result, and it is that goes into IREV.
Let's embark on the path to significant transformation and well-informed decision-making together. As the National Assembly, INEC and other stakeholders work towards improving our electoral process, you too can be part of the decision-making process by participating in the radio program.
We are on to Comrade Abdullah Mohammed. I'm calling for Bida Local Government Area Council of Niger State. I'm advocating to federal government or the member constituted to look into this electoral reform. That why should a member be in the house to speak the truth? At the end of the day, what we continue receiving or hearing is to suspend that member and to tell him to join any political party of his choice. Who then are we expecting to come and tell us the truth?
This is Brian Orator from Latte IG Kwase. My idea is that INEC should stand firmly as an independent body. Secondly, the local government election should be conducted from the INEC, not from the national level.
Remember, democracy is for the people. Together, we can make a difference. Let your voice be heard in the Electoral Reform Hour, where every opinion matters. PAACA, making democracy work for the people.
Thanks for staying tuned. We are back with your favorite program, Electoral Reform Hour, on the network service of Radio Nigeria.
Welcome back to Electoral Reform Hour on the network service of Radio Nigeria. Before the break, we began our discussion on building a peaceful and inclusive electoral process with Dr. Ayokunle Fagbemi, the Executive Director of the Center for Peacebuilding and Socio-Economic Resource Development, CepSERD. Back to our discussion on how we can make Nigeria's election peaceful and fair for everyone. Dr. Fagbemi, you've done excellent job around, helping to paint the canvas around the, this, and then thank you for dropping that totalitarian tiptoeing. That's the first time I'm hearing that, and it's exciting, coming to terms with that. Now, it takes me to the issue of misinformation and propaganda, and how that is shaping voter perception. How can electoral stakeholders counteract these negative effects of misinformation?
I observed you at the last interface of civil society actors with the Electoral Commission, and you made a submission on the need to up the ante and ensure that things are done. And you remember that I said earlier on, I do not believe that an electoral act should be amended during the first 5 years. The last one is 2022. What do we need to do before 2027 that we should be discussing any form of amendment? One of the critical components of what you were trying to engage the Commission on was about the monitoring of the political parties. And I want to submit to my very good friend that I've not seen in about a decade, the incumbent chairman of the Electoral Management Body, even before he leaves. The same way Maurice Iwu used the existing Electoral Act 2010, and he established the Electoral Institute, which is supposed to be functioning, and ideally, if anywhere within the Commission that we should concentrate on and strengthen, is the Electoral Institute. For the monitoring of the political parties, what the Commission needs is to create a bureau within the Commission, and I'm more than willing to provide him the concept note for this. You don't need a new law. It is just the existing legal framework that will be used, And the borough will now attract all these stakeholders, and the role that you are asking them to play, they will be in a position to play to ensure that the political parties are properly.
It is exciting. We are having our first caller for the year. Can we meet you immediately? Hello. Okay, it's gone off, but it's exciting. You are also part of this. You can make your contributions on the phone numbers that we have provided for you to. Good morning.
Yeah, this is Ibrahim Orator, popularly known and called Orator, calling from Lafiaji, Kwara State.
Thank you. Lafiaji is our first caller for the year. Thank you so very much for calling.
Okay. Yeah, my regards to your guest, sir.
Thank you,
Thank you, Dr. Fagbemi.
Yeah, in Lafiaji here, we are enjoying your program.
Good to hear that.
You know, the true democracy have ceased after the Fourth Republic being run by Tafawa Balewa, Chief Obasanjo Awolowo, Nnamdi Azikiwe. What I'm saying is that there's nothing wrong to existing electoral reform in Nigeria. The only thing we are lacking from our own mindset, we should change our attitudes, our negative attitude towards democracy, and that is what is affecting election. So what we are experiencing now is not democracy. To my own understanding, is modernized military rule. I remain Orator calling from Lafiaji, Kwara State. God bless you. Thank you, sir.
All right, so thank you for calling. The number to call us on is 09150 910 482. 09150 910 483. Those are the numbers you can get us on. I will take them again. 09150 910 482.
Hello, good morning, sir.
Hello, good morning.
I am Alhaji Ibrahim Gao from Badeji in the state of Kacha local government.
From Badeji?
Badeji in Kacha local government of Niger State.
Thank you.
Sir, before I go on with my contribution, I would like to express my dismay over network challenge we are having in radio service. Sometimes, whenever there are very important and interesting topics discussing in our radio, why is it that we have technical or challenges in the network? Warrant, we have a director general of radio corporation. Why can't he write a letter of memorandum to Minister of Information, giving in that with the topic, pay immediate attention to Nigeria Radio Corporation. Thank you very much, sir. In order to allow our democracy be matured, I would like INEC to force every candidate political party to come out with manifesto in written book, in order to allow the we that elect them can sue anyone who fails is convenient to court before or during his administration in the service. It is too bad. Our leader, after being elected, they ignore us, leaving us redundant. So it's very bad. Thank you very much.
Your passion is infectious, and I know that the DG of FRCN had your first complaint about the issue of network, and I think what needs to happen is that my producers will have to cut this part of the information we got from Niger and send it to the DG for immediate action. The number, as I told you, is 09150 0910 482. 09150 0910 483. Hello.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning to you.
This is Ndagi, Yaya Ndagi from Sotogba area, Bida, Niger State.
Yeah, good to have you. Happy New Year to you.
Same to you, sir. My regards to your guest.
Thank you.
All the issues around the INEC operations, they are good, but I always emphasize that we must go back to the root
And what I mean is, during the appointment of this national
commissioners.
Commissioners and even the INEC chairman, all these are under the executive, and a lot of things take place behind the scenes. There are a lot of compromise when the executive is trying to appoint somebody and even seeking approval of National Assembly. That they sit down and negotiate, compromise. So nothing they can do, if they come to the play, they can do nothing aside of what they have already promised or arranged for each other. So if there will be a way that the appointment and approval or whatever of this electoral umpires should not be under the purpose of these elected people. It will better than what we are experiencing now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your contribution. Dr. Fagbemi, you want to quickly weigh in before we get another call?
Thank you. Yes. Let me quickly address the gentleman from Badegi that talked about network service. I had my stint in broadcasting, and some of the challenges that the Radio Nigeria is experiencing is not localized to the network service per se. What they operate is that they have relay masts. Unfortunately, the energy crisis that we have in Nigeria, where some of those places don't have power. If a mast is down because there is no power, if the alternate power supply system to that mast is adversely affected during such period, and you'll discover that we are having more situation of we now relying on either our alternate power system, whereas the public supply that is coming from the disco ought to have been the standard one, and things fail, it will affect the transmission cycle and the bouncing of signals. And this is where we'll come back to the notion of, say, it ties down to the people that we get elected into office or we are allowed to emerge. So subsequently, as we move towards 2027, we need to take heed, like the gentleman that said, he is the same person that even talked about the manifesto. Manifestos are beautiful documents if only the political actors that become candidates believe in the political party. And you will agree with me, sir, that no matter how well crafted a political party has a manifesto, when you suddenly have an individual jump into that party within 6 months or 1 month to the election, he does not believe in that manifesto. He just wants to.
He probably didn't even see the manifesto.
Thank you. And he himself does not have a governance vision framework that he wants to work with. Like some of us, we always say, if they give us an opportunity, I've just told you, within the ambits of the Electoral Act, the way it is, there are a number of things, and I hope that my good friend Mahmoud will be.
Dr. Fagbemi, you want to shut down an industry. And I don't want you to do that. The electoral reform industry has to work. It serves both the National Assembly and our constituency. Because this argument has been on. We cannot continue to amend laws that are not tested, but I don't want you to just leave it like that.
Okay, sir. And then the first caller actually talked a great deal on the subject of the need to change the mindset and attitude. And this comes back to the National Orientation Agency. It's unfortunate the incumbent DG believes that he needs more money. It's not money that he needs. It is for him to be more resourceful. I used to work there. For example, I was privileged to handle the flagship early warning feedback reporting of that agency. NOA, 29 years ago, and I was doing the report weekly. Today, they can barely submit a report in a month. I didn't have the luxury of internet and computers. We only had electric typewriters and manual typewriters, and we were delivering every week. So the last time I was there, I saw the beautiful edifice. I saw a number of equipments lying down there fallow. They are only talking about money. Today, they are doing jingles that are irrelevant How can you be talking to people that go to school patrol and you are using television jingle to address it? The people that school patrol, when the trailer falls down, they don't have access to television. So coming back to this, it means back we are in the need of ensuring that we understand the appointment procedures and cycle. It is true that some of the individuals that end up are not proper matches, and yesterday at the Senate, it was clear that 3 of the resident electoral commissioners that were found wanting have been shown the way out. I am hoping that Nigerians, we started earlier on in the program, that Nigerians need to understand a lot more about the existing legal and policy frameworks. I'll give you a good example. One of the issues making the rounds now is the appointment and sustenance of a certain citizen, Kayode Egbetokun, in the Office of Inspector General of Police. If only Nigerians understood the fact that the 1999 Constitution says the appointment of any citizen into the Office of Inspector General by the President Commander-in-Chief is subject to the concurrence approval and notation of the Nigerian Police Council, you will discover that nobody will be allowed to act as Inspector General before a meeting of the Nigerian Police Council. Who are the members of the Police Council? All the state governors. They don't meet. So this man stays in office as acting Inspector General for 6 months, and you expect the Police Council to meet and they will say no to him. Interestingly, the Police Service Commission that is supposed to be mindful and responsible for appointment, promotion, and discipline, the function says they are expected to perform one role, even though there is an ouster clause that says they will not be involved in the appointment of Inspector General. But they are expected to play a role to ensure that nothing untoward happens in terms of the psyche, in terms of the morale of officers. So they will have to look at the manpower disposition and ensure that nobody is appointed IG out of cycle. If that is done, we won't be having the problems that we're having today, and we will not be having the kind of altercations that is ongoing when somebody will be calling somebody an illegal public officer. Please, Nigerians, National Orientation Agency, Honorable Minister of Information, kindly facilitate the proper production, mass production of a number of these legal instruments and codify them into simpler languages that we can share so that Nigerians are properly informed and we can engage on the basis of law. However, I will want to plead with my namesake, the incumbent Attorney General of the Federation. Please stop issuing unnecessary statements or making comments when you have no need to make them. Attorney Generals do not talk in public. Attorney Generals make considered, informed opinion and express to statutory bodies of executive and or go to the law courts to make pronouncements. Stop all this, I beg you.
But you know that we're hello. Hello, I thought we were getting more calls. I'm sure he's going to call back. We are a nation of grand standards. So both the one saying somebody is illegal and
hello, good morning.
Hello, good to have you.
Morning.
Happy New Year to you.
Thank you, Mr. Ezenwa.
Yes, sir.
This is Abu calling for Abakar calling from Bida, Niger State.
Abu, good to have you.
Thank you very much for having me. Mr. Fagbemi, thank you very much for your wonderful analysis.
Thank you, sir.
I believe as far as Nigerian society is concerned, you are very schooled in the issues of elections and partisans. I want to know your perspective on the appointment of the INEC chair. What is your perspective on it? Because we want to have independent National Electoral Commission that is fully independent. Independent National Electoral Commission that there should be statutory transfer from the Federation account to INEC instead of them going to National Assembly to lobby for funds. Now we have resident electoral commissioners that will be disengaged soon. I believe if the process is made independent, the appointment without having presidency appointing or nominating somebody, I believe we are going to have a system that we run very well, that will not be under the influence of nobody. And then there are so many political parties in Nigeria today, even those who are not coming for real election issues. I think there is need for them to strengthen the formation of parties in Nigeria, so that we don't have parties who, at the end of the day, we don't have good representatives at the polling unit. Because as you said, I think a lot needs to be done to strengthen our electoral process so that we can have dividends of democracy. Because if you look at it, the dividends of democracy in the country is nothing to talk about. We are seeing unemployment, we are seeing lack of lack of funding in our education sector, poor infrastructure, and a lot of things happening in the country. Thank you very much for your wonderful discussion.
All right, we're on the track to where we're going to be closing this. So I want you to take these concerns and also in the period also look at 3 critical areas that you think we need to focus as we go to 2027.
On the appointment of the Electoral Commission chair specifically, what we have as our legal and policy frameworks are sufficient. It is now how we activate it to make it more transparent and more accountable. The appointment of national commissioners and the chair ought to receive input from the Council of State, meaning therefore that the office of the Secretary of the Government of the Federation ought to play some roles in ensuring that proper coordination is done in the manner of the following. 1, how do you screen the individuals that are to be considered? Do they do thorough screening? That is the most important thing. This will require all stakeholders on the value chain doing what they're expected to do, and we having the reports of everything. In some climes, like in South Africa, they do it publicly. In terms of the hearing, it's like you are going through an interview process, and eventually they will still now go through all those Council of State kind of legal meetings and their legal things. I am hoping that Nigeria's trajectory going forward will become more transparent and accountable. You talked about the issue of the appropriation and funding of the Electoral Commission. Currently, the civil society, we've done more than enough in this area. We've gotten INEC to be on first line charge, but we now need INEC to be more transparent and more accountable.
Well, you see, Dr. Fagbemi, the challenge of this, and you are very experienced in our bureaucracy, we put them on the first line charge. The question is the way public officers behave in terms of transparency. Sometimes they don't even get this money. They want this one that is in the first line charge, and they are not open enough to say we have not got. As we speak now, the law says Anambra is going to hold in November. You are supposed to have that money for organizing Anambra. Their campaign will start in in April, thereabout. Now, nobody is asking whether monies. We are still talking about supplementary budget for INEC. Nobody is going to say, has that money been released? And our public officers will keep quiet, and then they would.
It is because all Nigerian stakeholders will wear masks. You cannot tell me if you did a proper budgeting cycle and planning, the Anambra election would not have been factored into alongside with the budgetary provisions for 2024. But you ask me, what are the things we need to do that are critical going forward? One, to plead with stakeholders to be more transparent, to plead with Nigerians to be more engaging and participatory in this participatory democracy that we have, and to kindly request that public officers should stop this idea of grandstanding or shutting people out. We were not able to discuss the issue of misinformation. Misinformation can be addressed by you being altruistic and providing as much of the data openly.
Nobody can have Dr. Ayokunle Fagbemi in an hour. I think there has to be an expansion of this program to accommodate people like you when you come to our program. Very special thanks to our guests, Dr. Ayokunle Fagbemi, Executive Director, Center for Peacebuilding and Socio-Economic Resource Development, CepSERD, for joining us on the program today. To our dear listeners, thank you for joining us on this edition of Electoral Reform Hour, brought to you by Peering Advocacy and Advancement Center in Africa, with generous support from MacArthur Foundation. Our engineers today have been Femi Muko and Wagji Joseph. The ICT are Emmanuel Ojeme and Jamila Abdullahi. Studio manager is Mahmoud Abdullahi. And my producers are Ando Oin and Joy Ubi. The supervisor is Usaina Akila MNI. And my team, the facilitating crew, Abu Grace, Jeremiah and Pume. Thank you for joining us. We apologize for the questions we could not take, but the conversation continues next week, Thursday, same time, same station. Thank you so very much.